It's Friday, August 16, 2019, and this is Globespan 24/7 News. My name is Samuel Signanan, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. WPA expects GCOM to be ready for elections by December. PNC-R accuses Jagdi of trying to create confusion. Ghana reject claims that military base on the construction. Opposition leader says CGX agreement NRF law invalid, and Ghana has 100-strong delegation for CARIFESTA 14. We start off tonight's news by telling you that the government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has called on the government of the Russian Federation to immediately withdraw a statement made with regards to the construction of a military base on the mouth of the Essequibo River, claiming that it is baseless and utterly false. The ministry said in a press release today that the statement was made by the spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry of the Russian Federation, M.V. Zakharova, during a briefing on August 15, 2019, on the sidelines of the International Youth Forum in the Russian city of Orenburg. The spokesperson stated that the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was completing the construction of a military base on one of the islands at the mouth of the Essequibo River under a plausible pretext, supposedly to stop the smuggling of weapons and drugs. She went on to say, and I quote, "There have already arrived several dozen so-called refugees from Venezuela to undergo training as part of reconnaissance and sabotage groups, and then to be dispatched to Venezuelan territory in order to destabilize the situation and carry out appropriate actions from extremists to terrorists," end quote. The Guyana government said the statement is especially unfortunate given that relations between Guyana and Russia have always been based on mutual respect, trust, and friendship. Government said it reaffirms its unequivocal commitment to the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Guyana therefore categorically rejects any suggestion that it would allow its sovereign territory to be used in a manner inconsistent with its neighborly and peaceful relations with Venezuela. The Working People's Alliance, WPA, says it expects GCOM to be ready for general and regional elections no later than December of this year. More from Shakima Day.
Executive member of the Working People's Alliance, Dr. David Hines, posited that if GCOM sticks to their 3-month timeline to finish the updated National Register, they should be ready for elections by December of this year. Addressing a media conference today, Dr. Hines, a political scientist, noted that if elections are thrown over to 2020, it would be enough reasons to say that government is using delaying tactics.
We in the WPA think that if you go into next year, then you're inviting yourself to the charge which they've been trying to put on the coalition, but it's not been sticking, to the charge of delaying tactics.
When asked if other coalition party members share the same view, the WPA executive replied that, like the rest of Guyana, they learn of big decisions when they read the news.
As you know, we are outside of that kind of decision making. A lot of these big decisions, we, like the rest of Guyana, read about in the press, you know? And so we are not at the table to determine that. And so we can't say whether they share that view.
The WPA says it welcomes the High Court's ruling that the current house-to-house registration is constitutional and lawful. The party is therefore urging all parties and organizations to respect the court's conclusions on the major issues, the house-to-house registration and the setting of an election date. Reporting for Globespan 24/7 News, Shakima Day.
Thanks, Shakima. The Central Housing and Planning Authority, CHNPA, in the first half of 2019 distributed 541 house lots. The house lots were distributed in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, which represents 54.1% of the target number for 2019. This was revealed in the 2019 Ministry of Finance's half-year report for the CHNPA. House lots were allocated at Ondernemen Phase 2, Ondernemen Phase 3, Reg Dorsey, Zealot Phase 1, Eccles, Providence Gardens, Section C, Block X, Golden Grove, Section A, Block X, Great Diamond, Monrepo, Lowlands, Enmore, Experiment, Plot B Herstellin, Perseverance, Prospect Providence 115, Parcel 123 Providence, Culvert City, and Tabatinga. Another 459 lots are expected to be allocated in the second half of 2019. The CHNPA are also slated to develop 4,000 new house lots in 12 areas for $700 million. Distribution of those lots will begin in 2020. The CHNPA intends to develop house lots in Mabaruma, Metamirsorg, Vigilance, Annandale, Munripo 2, Fowles, Hope Experiment, Ordnance, Fortland, Cummins Lodge, Kwakwani, Amelia's Ward, and Burjack. The 2019 national budget saw $300.7 billion allocated to the Ministry of Communities. Among the priority areas catered for were the core sectors of water and sanitation and housing, in particular with a focus on increased access to affordable housing units and increased occupancy. The Ministry of Public Infrastructure has once again put out a public advisory pleading with persons to take necessary precautions during the spring tide over the weekend. According to the advisory, the predicted tide indicates above normal levels for the period of August 14 to August 19. As such, the Sea and River Defense Department considers certain areas to be susceptible to possible flooding and as a result of storm surges, which may include overtopping of sea defense structures. Those areas include Pomeroon Riverbanks, Sanssouci to Sierra and Maria's Pleasure, to Meersburg, Wakenham Island, Canefield Amsterdam, Endeavour, Cane Garden, Leghorn Island, Windsor Forest to De William, West Coast Demerara, Perica Market Area, and Salem to Sparta, among others. PNC-R Executive Aubrey Norton has rejected claims made by opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo that the APNU plus AFC government is illegal, accusing the former Guyanese head of state of causing misperception. The details in this story.
In addressing a press briefing this morning, Norton said that Jagdeo is in a position where he hopes to get into power at all costs and is making certain statements that he cannot substantiate.
The government is clear in its head, it's operating legally. The Election Commission has jurisdiction over when elections are called, and the minute the Election Commission says to the President that we are prepared and ready and there's a credible list, there will be elections. One cannot stop the opposition leader from enjoying press coverage. All we can do is to point out that a lot of the coverage is aimed at getting political power through creating confusion, and we'll do everything to ensure that that doesn't occur.
Norton said the PNC-R welcomes the decision by Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire that the house-to-house registration is legal. This decision, he said, is in keeping with the CCJ ruling that is not within the court's remit to identify a date for elections.
House-to-house registration is a legal process which permits the people of Guyana to register. It will ensure that there is a new credible list that will result in credible elections. In this regard, the PNC-R wishes to urge all Guyanese to operate within the confines of the law by registering.
The opposition leader has declared that his party views the government as unconstitutional following the ruling of Chief Justice, who refused to set a date by which elections ought to be held. The Chief Justice on Wednesday ruled that the house-to-house registration is not illegal, but she urged the Guyana Elections Commission to consider other forms of verification. For Globespan 24/7 News, I'm Samuel Suknandan.
The opposition People's Progressive Party Civic, PPPC, says it does not recognize the validity of the agreement made with oil company CGX Energy or the enactment of the Critical Natural Resources Fund law, while stating that government has been acting illegally since March 21. Here's more.
Given the recent court ruling, the opposition has dubbed the extension of the contract with oil company CGX Energy and the recent passage of the Natural Resources Fund Act null and void. The General Secretary of the PPPC and opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo reiterated his party's position that any contract signed or law passed on or before March 21 was illegal.
So I saw they're extending now. the oil contract. I saw CGX got an extension, and I want to say to CGX, that extension is not valid that you got, because it's done in a period when we have a caretaker government. I've already made it clear that the daily sale of land and all of these things that they're practicing through not public processes, etc., they're all illegal, and not from the current date or from September 18, but now from March 21st.
Back in May, government had approved a strategic joint venture between CGX Energy and Frontier Energy Corporation to farm into 2 shallow water offshore petroleum prospecting licenses for the Quarantine and Demerara blocks. The Natural Resources Fund Bill was passed in the National Assembly back in January of this year in the absence of the parliamentary opposition. Meanwhile, Jack Dew says that President David Granger and his government have refused to obey the ruling of the CCJ in relation to the no-confidence motion.
My new position in the PVP, and we, based on this ruling, is that since there was no extension for the March 21st elections to be held by March 21st, within that period, then since March 21st of this year, the government has been practicing unconstitutional rule. It has been a usurper of power in Guyana. It is acting outside of the provision of our constitution.
The former Guyanese head of state said his party was prepared for this to happen after September 18, but on the basis of the new ruling, it reiterated what the PPP has been speaking about all the time. According to Jack Dew, should the PPP get back into office, it will repeal the Sovereign Wealth Fund immediately, but it also plans to do so with any disturbances to production activities, which are scheduled to commence in Guyana next year. For Globespan 24/7 News, I'm Samuel Suknandan.
A 66-year-old man was arrested at the Chettijagan International Airport on Tuesday after he was found with a quantity of cocaine in his shoes. According to reports, the U.S.-bound suspect, who celebrated his 66th birthday on the day he was arrested, was preparing to board a Caribbean Airlines flight when he was stopped by the authorities. The man is cooperating with police investigators and is expected to be charged shortly. Guyana's 100-strong contingent in Trinidad and Tobago for the much-anticipated CARIFESTA 14. Artistic Director Andrew Tyndall noted that the event presents an opportunity for the country's delegation to be ambassadors for Guyana, particularly in light of the recent interest in Guyana's potential oil industry. Today will be the Parade of Nations, and the delegation is expected to be decked out in the colors of the Golden Arrowhead, while they take center stage as they did previously in Barbados for the regional events. The festival brings together renowned writers, artists, musicians, and intellectuals featuring intercultural dialogue and celebrating the region's diversity. The island of Trinidad and Tobago is hosting this event for the 4th time, the first being in 1992. The other member states that have hosted this event are Guyana, 1972 and 2008, Jamaica, 1976, Cuba, 1979, Trinidad and Tobago, 1992, 1995, and 2006. St. Kitts and Nevis, 2000, Suriname, 2003, and 2013, as well as Haiti in 2015. The PNC-R said it is proud of the APNU plus AFC's Granger-led coalition accomplishments, especially the policies and programs geared towards the development of Guyana's youth population. More details in this story.
The drafting of a national youth policy, the launch of the Guyana Youth Corps, the training of youth generally, the creation of employment for youth, the training and financing of young people in small businesses, the ending of extrajudicial killing of our youth, the increase of scholarship for youths, the measures taken to improve the public education system, and the measures to reduce illiteracy and innumeracy have all resulted in hope among the youth of Guyana.
That was PNC-R executive Aubrey Norton. Norton claims that a mere 4 years ago, the youth was hopeless. They lived in fear of the police even if they were law-abiding. The school dropout rate was very high. The illiteracy and innumeracy rate was extremely high. There was little or no training available to them.
The APNU plus AFC Granger-led coalition government designed policies, programs, and projects that have restored hope. Guyana is now a state in which the development of youth is guided by a youth policy, which places focus on the education and training of young people for employment and for business. Thousands of young people have been employed and continue to benefit from the Youth Innovation Project in the form of startup financing and financial literacy and small business management training. More than 1,000 young people have been able to start their own businesses.
The PNC-R says the government recognizes that Guyana's youth is a human resource to develop. The government, therefore, trained thousands of young people in leadership and provided them with the tools that they needed to work among their peers and place their communities on the course to sustainable development. Many youths are now placed in both appointed and elected positions in our society, according to the PNC-R executive. Reporting for Globespan 24/7 News, Shakima Day.
Thanks, Shakima. 335 persons will for the first time have flush toilets equipped with septic tanks and hand wash sinks in their homes free of cost. This is made possible through the signing of 10 of 12 contracts. Altogether, the 12 contracts total approximately $1 million for the supply and installation of septic tanks in the water supply and sanitation infrastructure improvement program areas. The contracts were signed between the contractors and the Guyana Water Incorporated, GWI, as the executing agency and are being funded by the government of Guyana via int'l American Development Bank IDB loan and matching grant from the European Union. Among the beneficiaries of communities for which these contracts were awarded are Cornelia Ida to D. Kendrin on the west coast of Demerara, Diamond to Herstelling on the east bank of Demerara, and Sheath Anchor to number 19, Good Banana Land, East Berbice. The two remaining contracts are for Georgetown and have been approved for an award. Construction and testing of the new facilities, which comprise of flush toilets, septic tanks, and hand wash sinks, are expected to take 4 to 9 months for completion beginning September 2019. The 335 beneficiaries in these areas make up phase 1 of this project. We will take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Please stay tuned.
We would like to ask all of our faithful viewers to kindly like and follow Globespan 24/7 Facebook page and subscribe to Globespan 24/7 YouTube channel to receive up-to-date notifications of when we are live. Globespan 24/7 has vacancies for full-time positions such as reporters, newscasters, and news editors. Persons serious about joining a new and dynamic news team are asked to send their application to careers@globespantechnology.com.
This newscast is brought to you with the kind compliments of Travelspan GT, with locations in Georgetown and Berbice. For all your travel needs, call Travelspan GT at 327-1701, located at Lot 3A North Road, Georgetown, between Camp and Wellington Street. In Rose Hall, call 337-4287, and in New Amsterdam, call 333-6230. Call Travelspan today.
Thanks for staying with us. We'll now take a look at our regional and international news. Defense chiefs of Russia and Venezuela have signed an agreement overseeing visits by warships of both nations to each other's ports and persistent U.S. efforts to undermine the government in Caracas. The military agreement was signed in Moscow on Thursday between the Russian defense minister and his visiting Venezuelan counterpart, the Interfax news agency reported. The development came nearly a week after President Nicolas Maduro vowed during a rally in Caracas that Venezuela ready to resist and defeat Washington's imperialist blockade against the South American nation. His remarks followed repeated rounds of U.S. sanctions, deteriorated Venezuela's economic problems, but still failing to dislodge him from power or prompt the nation's military authorities to turn against him. Washington has repeatedly demanded that Moscow withdraw its support for Maduro. Russia has rejected the request, insisting that the U.S. is attempting to instigate a coup against the Venezuelan president in defiance of international law. The U.S. threatened Russia with new sanctions last month over its support for Maduro. The White House's point man for Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, said the new sanctions against Moscow would be announced on July 25, would have been announced on July 25. And finally, for regional international news, North Korea has rejected any further talks with South Korea, calling its decision completely the fault of South Korea's actions. It issued a statement in response to a speech by South Korean President Moon Jae-in on Thursday. Meanwhile, early on Friday, North Korea test-fired 2 missiles into the sea off its eastern coast, the South Korean military said. It is the 6th such test in less than a month. The 2 unidentified projectiles were fired about 800 hours Thursday and traveled 140 miles, reaching an altitude of 18 miles, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said. 6 days ago, North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan. The series of tests comes after U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed during a meeting in June to restart denuclearization negotiations. North Korea has faced international sanctions for its development of nuclear weapons. We now take a look at what's happening in sport. Ian Morgan, England's World Cup winning captain, says he wants to carry on as captain if his troublesome back allows him to do so. The 32-year-old has a history of back injuries and suffered a spasm during the last World Cup. However, he said that he wants to lead England at the T20 World Cup in Australia in October of 2020. According to Morgan, he needs more time to think. It's a big decision and a big commitment, he told BBC Test Match Special. Morgan was the architect of England men's first World Cup triumph, leading them from the humiliation of a first-round exit in 2015 to victory in the incredible final against New Zealand at Lord's in July. On Friday, he was back at Lord's, being presented with a commemorative cap by the England and Wales Cricket Board for his World Cup success. When asked if he wanted to captain in Australia next year, his response was absolutely, who doesn't? And finally, in sports, St. Lucia's franchise in the Hero Caribbean Premier League CPL will replace Stars franchise after an announcement was made that the team will return to its former name, St. Lucia Zouks. Zouks shots the St. Lucia Zouks will replace the St. Lucia Stars for the 2019 CPL season following the recent termination of the participation agreement with the company operating the Stars franchise. The Zouks will be playing matches in St. Lucia and across the Caribbean in this year's CPL, which takes place from September 4 to October 12. The Zouks was the name for the St. Lucia franchise when it was founded in 2013, and it still resonates with cricket fans around the world. St. Lucia is one of 4 islands in the Caribbean known for its Zouk music, making it the perfect name for the St. Lucian team. The Zouks will be playing 10 group games during the tournament, starting with a match against Guyana Amazon Warriors in Guyana on September 5. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before we go, here's a recap of our major headlines. We apologize for that. Thanks for watching tonight's Globespan 24/7 news. Do have a pleasant rest of the evening. Goodbye for now.